So Mike came out and gave me a jump. We got some jumper cables out, and it took a while with that episode. I thought, there's something wrong with the alternator. And driving home, I was going to go to the mechanic, but I thought, can't be the alternator. I just got that checked. I just got a new battery, and I got the alternator checked when I got the new battery. So I think I just kind of left the car door open a little bit too much, so my dome light kind of drained down the energy of that battery yesterday.
I think it's past time that you've turned that car into a cube.
No, that car is it's my little gold mine.
Oh, yeah.
It's my
definitely a gold mine.
It's my sunshine when I wake up in the morning, because I know it's going to bring me to and from my my designations,
except for when it doesn't,
which are my jobs. So so I parked it in backwards this morning to make sure, so I have my nose sticking out just in case there's that small glimmer of shall it not start.
I'm going to buy cake for everybody when that thing finally gets turned into a cube.
Yeah.
Long overdue. But
hey, thanks for tuning in to us in Facebook, and that's going to be a great link to go to. The really nice thing about it is we are nice here right in Stuart in the Port St. Lucie area, nice and local, so we can lift your spirits locally when we talk about area streets and roads and cars driving on it like mine, and the area businesses, and it's nice just to know that we're right in your backyard.
Yeah. So let's see, what else do we got going on besides we got facebook.com/WSTU1450, got the website update. What's next? I know the fires out in California are just ridiculous. Every day it seems like it's getting worse and worse. They said on the radio on Fox News at the top of the hour, almost 1,000 homes destroyed because of this thing. It got so hot that it made its own weather system. I don't even understand that.
Yeah, didn't it make it like a weather system, like carrying like firestorm, typhoon-like things through the air even?
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. There's I think 17 different wildfires burning. And the biggest wildfire area they're saying is that Carr area, Carr.
Mm-hmm.
I think that must be Carr County. But we just went through the episodes of the wildfires burning just last year.
Has there been a period of time where California hasn't been on fire? Because it seems like it's been on fire almost nonstop. I still remember from, I think it was last year, you're right, of people driving through, what was it? Was it the southern portion of LA or the northern portion of LA, where you could see there's a video that made the rounds on Facebook of somebody driving on a highway, and it's just the hills were just completely on fire, and it looked like they were going through hell. I mean, It looked like they were driving into hell.
Fire, coming right across the interstate. I was so worried about my one of my best friends out there in Yorba Linda, because she lives right across the interstate. And, that fire was just right there. And people were driving, and smoke and the fires going right across the highway. I wonder what's happening when California just seems like to be burning up like this. I think some houses were affected too. I'm pretty sure the area where Ellen DeGeneres lived, she had to evacuate. Even Oprah Winfrey, I think her home was a scene of where she was like in that fire zone too.
That was last year, right?
Yeah.
This year, I know they said 980 something homes destroyed already by that fire out there in California, and they're bringing in a bunch of people. And I know some local people who are connected to some firefighters that were sent out there, and it's a major fire, and it's been a major issue, and just incredible how long that's been going on. Another amazing story that I saw yesterday: there was a plane crash in Mexico, and everybody walked away. An airliner, an Aeromexico jetliner, crashed while taking off during a severe storm in northern Mexico on Tuesday. It caught on fire, smacked down into a field, but everybody on board got out of there with their lives.
That's kind of that seems to be a little bit too amazing. That sounds like a major calamity where it, tried to take off and starting on fire and smacking back down. That just sounds too good to be true. How many people were on board that plane?
103 103 people were on the plane, 97 passengers. I'm sorry, 99 passengers and 4 crew members. The pilot and one other person were in serious but stable condition. 49 people total were taken to area hospitals, but most of them had just minor injuries.
Wow. That's just, they had to wake up in the morning and say, and pray, to Jesus, thank you. And what kind of a miracle that was. It sounds like it was a lot better. That one just sounds major where it could have been a whole lot worse. But I'm happy, I'm happy there weren't any fatalities, and hopefully the pilot's going to be okay with, it sounds like the pilot had the most serious of injuries. So they can just thank their lucky stars.
Apparently, they were trying to take off during some type of storm that had marble-sized hail. Why even try to take off in that?
Oh, that's marble-sized hail. I'm sure planes have taken off in a little bit of worse even. That doesn't sound too major.
Really? Chunks of ice flying through the air doesn't sound major to you?
Well, it depends how big the chunks of ice are. If it's little chunks like little marbled sleet, that might not be too bad.
I don't want to be on a plane that's taken off with any type of marble or any type of hail outside. No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of these storms that have had, can you imagine hail coming down like in big hail balls, where they're the size of baseballs? I've heard of that happening before.
Yeah.
I would hate to have a brand new car and have my new car sitting outside when that hail was coming down and getting all the damage on a new vehicle.
Yeah, you get all these little dings in your roof from the hail as it comes down. I was in a plane that tried to land. I think we were flying into Pittsburgh at the time, and we were flying in, and I just remember a really nasty storm had pulled in or had gone over the airport, and we were coming down, and we got into the cloud line, and it was rocking and rolling, and then we were down where I could look out the window, and we were below the tree line.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really low. We were just about down at the runway, and the rain got so bad that the pilot punched it.
Whoa.
and really punched the engines and took back off again.
Uh-huh.
That he got down close enough and was just about to land. It was like, nope, not doing it. Not in this weather. And that wasn't hailing. That was just the nasty rainstorm.
Did your stomach do a whole big flip? Where's your stomach kind of flipping with that?
Yeah, it didn't feel great.
Are you the kind of flyer where when you go through a little turbulence and in the plane and you just feel that boom, 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 boom? Does your heart skip a beat a little bit? Do you get really fearful when that just a little bit of turbulence?
I don't really get fearful when there's turbulence. I really don't like takeoff. Takeoff is the part that I don't like. And it's funny. I flew a lot when I was a kid because, my parents are divorced. I lived here in Florida. My dad lived in Pennsylvania. So I would fly back several times a year to see him. And I never had any problem flying when I was a kid. And then right around the time that I turned about 18, 19 years old, I started to get really worried about takeoffs.
Uh-huh.
And I remember thinking, man, I can't wait to be 21 so I could, just throw back a drink or two just to take the edge off.
Really?
And then
that bad, huh?
Well, I mean, it was not bad enough where I needed to lose my senses, but bad enough to where I wanted to just take the edge off a little bit. And then I turned 21, and for the next 3 years, all my flights happened to be super early in the morning because they were the cheapest.
Oh.
So I couldn't even enjoy that drink on the plane.
Yes, you can. I think they still serve it that early. Or how early are you? Oh, you're talking about 5 a.m. and 6 or 4 or 5 in the morning, right?
Yeah, it was early in the morning.
Very early. They're probably not serving that yet. But to me, the takeoffs are the most fun. That ascension, I love it. It's just like getting on a roller coaster ride to me. I love taking off. It's the descension coming down that I have a hard time with because of my ears. My ears are sore. That's why I like to take a direct flight, and so I don't even have to change planes where I only have to descend one time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the descension, I have to chew gum, I have to swallow, chew more gum and swallow. I'm holding my ears like a little baby. It's just really hard on my ears. So
yeah.
I like going up. I don't like coming down on the plane. But what am I saying? I do like coming down and landing safely. That's always a good feeling too.
6:21 is the time here this morning. We've got Treasure Coast News coming up next. The toxic algae alert is making national headlines. NBC News crews visited Southwest Florida, where blue-green algae has filled the waterways. It's the same issue many parts of the Treasure Coast are dealing with right now. WPTV's Alana Quillen spoke with local leaders about how the national attention is affecting tourism.
This area relies on visitors from all across the country. Today, I learned that the local tourism bureau is actually taking lessons learned from 2016 and applying it to this year. They're ramping up social media to try to keep tourists in the loop. Florida in the spotlight, but not for a good reason.
How bad is it here? It is pretty drastic.
NBC Nightly News now reporting on the algae crisis. That kind of national attention is something the Martin County Tourism Bureau must navigate.
So we're trying to showcase all the things you can do, but the misperception is everything's shut down.
Tourism manager Narissa Okie told me they've received a couple of concerns from potential tourists worried about what they're seeing on social media when it comes to algae.
I think some of the misconceptions are that you hear the area is blanketed in algae, or that there's no access to any type of water.
She says transparency is key.
And while there's definitely areas you don't want to be taking part in, or activities you don't necessarily want to do right now, a lot of the things that tourists typically do are not impacted by our water conditions.
The Bureau has ramped up its website, protectourparadise.com. They've also launched the Here and Now campaign, photos posted by tourists themselves only within the last 5 days.
So it's not the Tourism Bureau showing a pretty picture that may be from a month ago or 2 months ago. It's all very relevant content.
The site also has a marquee with the latest water conditions, as well as answers to common toxic algae questions, contact numbers, and links to water quality reports.
It's a very delicate line. We want people to come, but we want to make sure we're not giving them false information or a false experience when they come down.
Now, the Chamber of Commerce told me that tourists right now are really enjoying offshore fishing, which has not been affected. And unlike 2016, all of the beaches here in Martin County have remained open. Alana Quillen, WPTV News Channel 5.
The state is working to find vendors to clean up all the algae as part of a 7-county state of emergency. Captain Diana Voss with Marine Cleanup Initiative Incorporated thinks she has the solutions.
We're interested in is clean water, and we're interested in doing something about this very problem.
It's a new type of technology, a robot that collects the algae and even puts oxygen back into the water. It's called an algae remediation robot project, a pontoon watercraft powered by solar and wind. It can convert algae into synthetic fuel. Now, dozens of vendors are applying to help clean up all the algae blooms throughout the state. And the public is invited to a meeting tonight in Stuart to talk about the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project with the Army Corps of Engineers. The meeting will be from 6 to 8 p.m. at the IRSC Wolf High Technology Center in Stuart. Tuesday, a group of Senate Democrats spoke out about the prospect of downloadable blueprints that would enable individuals to make plastic guns using a 3D printer being released online Wednesday. Florida Senator Bill Nelson denounced the idea of such guns.
Suddenly, there is going to be published on the internet the plans for making a gun that can evade the detection system in airports and seaports and all of these governmental buildings, as well as some sports stadiums. It just defies common sense.
The 3D printed guns would not carry serial numbers and would be untraceable. Last month, the State Department settled a lawsuit with Defense Distributed, allowing the company to publish the blueprints. On Monday, at least 8 states and the District of Columbia filed suit in federal court in Seattle, calling on the Trump administration to block the online publication of the blueprints. On Tuesday, President Trump tweeted, quote, "I'm looking into 3D plastic guns being sold to the public. Already spoke to NRA. Doesn't seem to make much sense," end quote. Meanwhile, a new poll indicates the U.S. Senate race between incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson and Republican Governor Rick Scott continues to be one of the most competitive in the country. The Mason-Dixon survey shows Scott opening a narrow lead over Nelson, 47% to 44%. More construction in Port St. Lucie. Work is set to begin today to improve the intersection of Port St. Lucie Boulevard and Gatlin Boulevard. Lane closures and detours will be necessary, but will only be used on an as-needed basis and will generally take place during off-peak hours. The work is set to last through April of 2019. Another major Port St. Lucie Boulevard intersection is in the middle of improvements just a few miles down the road. The intersection between Port St. Lucie Boulevard, Bayshore, and the Turnpike ramp is getting upgraded as well. That's a look at our Treasure Coast news here this morning. It is 6:27.
We don't see any accidents on this Wednesday morning. Everything looking clear. Major highways are fine. Federal highway is smooth. Call if you see traffic. We're at 220 WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
Port St. Lucie has 77, and WPTV weather is brought to you by Code Red Roofers. Roofers who respond. Code Red Roofers cares, calls you back, shows up and finishes on time. Call 287-2829. Let's get more on our forecast at WPTV.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/WSTU1450. Right now it is 6:30. Here's FNN News. Taking a look at sports last night in Atlanta, Colby Allard, supported by a 19-hit attack that included 3 home runs, won his major league debut as the Braves beat up on the Marlins 11-6. Atlanta scored early and often. They led it 8-2 after the 4th inning. That wasn't nearly as bad, though, as some of the other beatdowns in the majors last night. The Rays beat the Angels 10-6. The Diamondbacks shut out the Rangers 6-0. But the biggest the biggest beatdown of them all came at the hands of the Nationals. They defeated the Mets 25-4. Washington scored 7 runs in the bottom of the first, then 3 more in the second, 3 more in the third, 3 more in the fourth, 3 more in the fifth, and then finally, just to top it all off, 6 more in the 8th. It was the highest scoring game in Nationals franchise history. Daniel Murphy hit 2 early home runs for the Nationals there as they handed the Mets their 60th loss of the season. Miami Dolphins training camp. The Dolphins actually have today off after 5 straight practices. Now, the big news from yesterday revolved around the new wide receiver for the Dolphins, Albert Wilson. Head coach Adam Gase said that they're trying to figure out ways to use the new speedy wide receiver. It was originally believed that Wilson would operate from the slot, but Coach Gase says he envisions him more as an outside receiver. Wilson is from Port St. Lucie. He was born in Port St. Lucie. He played high school as a quarterback for the Port St. Lucie High School Jaguars, named the TC Palms All-Area Offensive Player of the Year in 2010 as a senior, played college at Georgia State Panthers before spending 4 seasons with the Kansas City Chiefs. Currently, Wilson is listed as the 4th wide receiver for the team behind Kenny Stills, Danny Amendola, and Devontae Parker. That's a look at sports here on WSTU.
Mick Jagger would go like this. He'd go, Diet Coke, and one would appear in his hand. Now, that's not nice, right? The way I was raised, you're supposed to say, may I please have a Diet Coke, please? And then maybe you will get one. And I bet all of you were taught to say please and thank you. But if all of us could go, Diet Coke, and one would appear in our hand, we'd do it all day long. Even if you don't like Diet Coke, you just summon them so you could chuck them at oncoming cars. Famous people are often rude because they're used to getting things really quickly. I bet a lot of us are pretty polite. But as soon as we get things quickly, we start to get ruder and ruder. Like, look at technology. It's faster than ever, and we're like ruder than ever. People walk around on the phone now like, hello, you still there? Lost him. And that's it. No follow through with that guy. 50 years ago, if you were on the telephone with your friend and suddenly the line just went dead, that meant your friend was murdered. The phone used to be a big deal. It was a long, polite process. Back in the 1940s, the phone was like a wood box with a thing on it. I don't know. And there weren't even numbers. You just go, hello, anyone? Anyone in the world? And then you go, operator, ring me Neptune 5, 117. And the operator is a real person that you had to be nice to. You should be like, 1 moment, please. I'm putting wires into a board filled with holes to move the voices around, because it is the 40s. And it took like 90 minutes. Now people just drive around screaming at their phones like, call home. Calling Tom, not Tom.
Dunkin' Donuts is now selling its first ever gluten-free product. It's called a cup. Trump just swore in his new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Check out what he said right before the ceremony. Watch this.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you. We're proud of him, right? Anybody not proud? Because let me know now, please.
Why? That's why you should never have Trump speak at your wedding. Like, anyone else not into this?
6:42 here on this Wednesday morning, August 1st. Let's take a trip back throughout this day in history with Bonnie.
Here's 82 years ago today, in 1936, the Olympic torch appeared for the first time. And this was at the opening ceremonies in Berlin, where the ceremony was presided over by Adolf Hitler.
What year?
It was 1936
Okay.
at the Olympics there.
That was the first time they had the torch? Interesting.
Yep, it looks like it. And did you see that little boy's on the news today? His name is like Clark Kent, and he's only like maybe a 8-year-old, and he beat the record of Michael Phelps in swimming, or he beat Michael Phelps' time. And
What?
Yeah, with like the 100-meter butterfly, he swam faster than the one and only Michael Phelps. So this little boy's name, they're already calling him Superman, and he goes by Clark Kent. So
Wait, does he go by Clark Kent, or did his parents name him Clark Kent?
they named him Clark Kent. He was Clark Kent before they dubbed him Superman. But like, he's a really fast swimmer, and we're probably going to see him someday in the up and coming Olympics.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got an 8-year-old swimming, and it's great that he can swim fast like that, but what's that going to be like when he is 3 times the size, when he's an adult,
Yeah.
actually trying to swim through the water? That's a big difference.
If he does too much swimming too, I know by that time they can, strike a little bit of burnout action too. And maybe by the time he gets to be Michael Phelps' age and Michael Phelps' size, he might not even want to swim anymore. But we'll have to wait and see on him. 47 years ago, in 1971, the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour debuted on CBS. And they had some big stars on that show, the likes of Terry Garr and Steve Martin throughout the years. I think Telly Savalas was on there at season 3, and also George Burns, Glenn Campbell, the likes of Carol Burnett, Farrah Fawcett, Burt Reynolds, a big, huge starring cast on that show.
Never really seen the appeal of Cher.
Yeah.
I don't think she particularly sounds all that good singing wise. I basically know her as just somebody who everyone has accepted is the diva. That's why she's famous. And I don't know. I mean, do you think she has a particularly good singing voice?
Not particularly good, no.
Why is she so famous then?
I don't know. She has an audience. She has made the hits like I Got You, Babe is just a fascinating hit. And she got Believe, when Believe came out in, I think it was 1988, no, maybe 88 or no, 91 or 92 when Believe came out. That had an appeal about it, where anybody that was driving with their radio on in their car, that song would come on and it would stay on. So she's had some music that kind of appealed to the masses.
I think,
and she can act.
I think her biggest song that has at least stood some of the test of time, in my opinion, just looking at some of her biggest songs, if I could turn back time's probably one of them. And then I Got You, Babe, which, I mean, doesn't Sonny basically carry that song? Is it really? I feel like I hear Sonny more in that song than I do Cher.
I don't know. I just can't picture. By listening to anybody else singing that with Sonny, I'm just not really hearing it right now. But I'm sure there is a woman that could have come on and replaced her.
I just don't think, I never thought she was all that special when it came to singing voice. And then, but she's known as like the queen of the divas, a super diva.
Super diva, because she's already like 74 right now, and her body just looks so in shape, and she keeps herself looking so young. And of course, she's also on the big screen back in the movie, the ABBA movie that came out with the musical.
Yeah, Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. She's back out in that too. I don't know. She just lives on and keeps her youthful appearance. Not that I don't think it's bad for somebody not to keep a youthful appearance. people go by appearances.
Move on.
Okay.
Kill it.
Okay. American Graffiti opened in theaters 1973.
That's the George Lucas.
Yep, George Lucas directed, and Ron Howard was in it. Richard Dreyfuss,
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford.
That's right.
And Cindy Williams, Wolfman Jack, and Mackenzie Phillips. Mackenzie came to the set when she was only 12 years old, and the producer had to become like her legal guardian. So she was just like a little 12-year-old on the set of American Graffiti.
I don't know if I've ever seen it. I don't think I've ever seen American Graffiti. I know it's talked about all the time.
Mm-hmm. It came out like 5 months before Happy Days came out with Ron Howard.
Oh, really?
Yep. But they say that Happy Days actually was a spin-off of Love American Style.
Correct.
Which you would think it would make more sense to be more of a spin-off of American Graffiti.
Oh, would it? I don't know. I've never seen American Graffiti.
American Graffiti, yeah, it's quite like it because you have like a young rock Howard, driving his car around the streets and, listening to the music of the 1950s. The movie came out in 1962, and then it was, they re-released it in 1968, where it made some 63 million box office dollars, even in the re-release. So it's a classic that you might want to see. 37 years ago in 1981, MTV was launched in an estimated 2 million homes at 12:01 a.m. And it started off with the words, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll." And you know what the first video shown on there was, Mike?
What was it?
It was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you had that one in trivia, a few weeks ago.
Yes, I did.
And moving on, let's see if I can. Oh, this is really up your alley more. 32 years ago in 1986, the fine piece of classic cinema known as Howard the Duck was released. It was produced by Lucasfilm. Howard was actually the second Marvel movie ever, after a Captain America serial that ran for 15 episodes in theaters back in 1944.
Really?
It says, although Marvel wasn't even known as Marvel Comics yet at the time, so you can make the case that Howard the Duck was the first Marvel movie. And he reemerged in 2014 with a cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, and I remember watching that original Howard the Duck movie. I had no idea it was a Marvel movie at the time. And even though I've read a ton of Marvel comics over the years, I've read very few Howard the Duck comics. He's more of a joke character that pops up here and there. I remember liking the movie as a kid. As an adult, I look back at it now and see how weird it was and know why it wasn't as popular but when I was a kid, I was like, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
You got an animatronic duck walking around talking to people. This is fantastic. I'm all in.
And 24 years ago, this is weird, 1994, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley confirmed they had secretly wed 11 weeks earlier. And they divorced in 1996, but continued to date on and off for 4 more years after their divorce.
Wait, they got divorced but continued to date?
Yeah, like 4 more years after. I read it in 2 places this morning, so it must be true.
No, it must be true.
One on my complete sheet and one in Wikipedia. So therefore I read it must be true. Okay, in our birthdays, we have Jason Momoa, who's 39.
Aquaman.
Mm-hmm, that's coming out. Sam Mendes, director of
terrible.
American Beauty, is... how old is Sam Mendes? You know what? I didn't write down how old he is.
Sam Mendes is going to be, let's see, when did El Mariachi come out? That would have been in the late 80s.
I think I read 37. 37 is what I kind of recall seeing.
I'm going to go with 57.
Oh, my.
He's 53.
53. Oh, yeah, he directed that James Bond movie too, Skyfall.
It's a good James Bond movie.
And Joe Elliott, lead singer of Def Leppard, 59 today.
All right.
And birthdays and back in the day for August 1st already.
All right. Thanks, Bonnie. 6:51 is the time here this morning. We've got Treasure Coast News coming up next. The first ever high school in St. Lucie County has undergone several transformations over the years, but maybe none bigger than the latest one. The Fort Pierce Magnet School of the Arts is set to turn into the first K-8 performing arts school on the Treasure Coast. WPTV's John Shaman reports.
It's a piece of Fort Pierce history, standing since 1914.
Originally, the school was St. Lucie High School.
The first high school in the county, this building along Delaware Avenue has undergone many changes. Now, the Fort Pierce Magnet School of the Arts,
This is the most excited I have ever been.
is known as CAST.
This is a Creative Arts Academy of St. Lucie.
Dr. Lori Ann Reed is principal of the first K-8 performing arts school on the Treasure Coast.
Students really need to be exposed to the fine arts at an early age so that they're able to make some decisions and where they want to go.
A small theater is still under construction, and dance studio space is being created. There's also major work wrapping up in the auditorium with new lights, speakers, and a soundboard for hands-on student training.
Have and be able to make adjustments within the sound system so that they are providing the right sounds throughout the auditorium.
The district was successful in applying for a $12.5 million federal grant that over the next 5 years will make improvements not just here to the CAST Academy, but also to the Gaines Academy of Emerging Technologies, and then next year to Fort Pierce Westwood High School. The goal is to get more students in underutilized schools by establishing unique programs.
Probably about 350 or 400 to about 650 eventually.
The school is open to all students in St. Lucie County. Interested? There's an application on the district website and a random lottery to fill the seats. In Fort Pierce, John Shaman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
More than 800,000 gallons of raw sewage has been dumped into the Indian River Lagoon by the city of Titusville, and they did it accidentally after an abandoned sewer main gave way near a lift station. The city says that leak has been patched. Deputies arrested a Martin County teenager after he opened the door holding onto a bag of cannabis. The Martin County Sheriff's Office says that 18-year-old Maximilian Alexander had more than 40 grams of cannabis packed into a clear plastic bag ready to sell. When he heard a knock on the door, he thought it was his customer, so he opened up the door with the bag in his hand. But instead of his customer, it was the sheriff's deputies who were there to check up on Alexander. He had been involved in a fight earlier, and the deputies said they wanted to check in on him. Alexander was arrested and taken to the Martin County Jail. That's a look at our Treasure Coast news this morning. It's 6:55.
We're not seeing any accidents or any kind of a slowdown for this morning, and if you should see one, please let us know about it. We're at 220-9788, 220-WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
And our high today reaches 89 degrees. We're going to see some showers again later on this afternoon. And yes, Thursday, more than likely, we will see the rain showers tomorrow too, with that daytime high reaching 88. Well, right now in Stuart, it's 80 degrees. Still not seeing any accidents. It's a great morning right here on the roads, including your major highways, and side streets are clear. St. Lucie County and Martin County. If you see traffic, let us know. We're at 220-9788, 220-WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
In Jensen Beach, it's 79. It's 76 right now. Port St. Lucie, let's get more from Glenn Glazer at WPTV.
There are nearly 100 wildfires burning in the U.S., almost all of them in the West.
Jury selection begins in the trial of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort.
Trump tweeted a thank you to Senator Rand Paul. The Republican announced he will support Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court.
The former personnel chief at FEMA is facing accusations of carrying on inappropriate relationships with subordinates.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on the Trump administration's efforts to reunite migrant children.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says officials are now looking at rule changes around capital gains.
More major leaguers switching teams.
Facebook is exposing 32 Facebook and Instagram pages that the social networking giant says were involved in a political influence campaign with links to the Russian government.
The entire cast of the Disney Marvel film Guardians of the Galaxy signed an open letter of support for director James Gunn.
According to Digital Music News, Apple now has more subscribers to its streaming music service than industry leader Spotify.
Here's a scary story to start your Wednesday here. There's a guy out of Wisconsin who had to have his legs and his hands amputated because a dog licked him.
Did the dog lick him? I'm wondering if this dog licked him on some open wounds or something. Maybe scars that he already had on him. Something in the dog's saliva wasn't very friendly. It had a lot of bacteria. But if he's losing limbs over this one, Mike, he has to get amputated even.
He lost both of his legs and his hands because the dog licked him. Doesn't say whether he got licked on a scar or an open wound or anything like that, but it is a bacteria that he contracted known as Capnocytophaga canamorsis, which is a bacteria found in healthy dogs and cats that causes severe sepsis and fatal septic shock, gangrene of the digits or extremities, high-grade bacteremia, meningitis, endocarditis, and eye infections. Normally, you get this from a dog bite, but he wasn't bitten by a dog. He was around 8 different dogs around the time that he would have gotten sick, though. His wife said he's a dog lover, so just any dog he sees, he's all over. So it could have been any number of dogs that got him sick. But they said this bacteria, quote, hit him with a vengeance. He looked like he got beat up with a baseball bat. They said he was bruised all over his body. He went to the hospital, and doctors first took his feet, then had to take his legs up through his knees and then take his hands down to his mid palms. And he's going to have some work done on his nose because his nose got destroyed.
Even his nose.
Yeah.
This, this sounds like a very rare situation. And yeah, it just makes me wonder how he was licked because so many people just love their dog. And, so many dogs will lick their owners' faces, lick the face all over. And that sounds like a rare occasion if he gotten this kind of condition from a dog lick.
I knew you could get sick from being bit by a dog. I knew that there was bacteria in there. I didn't know it could cause that.
No.
I didn't know it could cause them to just start taking limbs away because you got so sick.
And how ironic is like he has 8 dogs, and it sounds like this sort of fella has been like a lover of dogs like all his life.
That's what his wife says.
That's a very sad story. That's sad.
Man, I can't imagine just getting a simple lick from a dog. Happens all the time. Sometimes that's like the best thing that happens to you in the day is a dog comes over and licks your hand.
Yeah.
Right? And you could now lose your limbs, your extremities because of it. And apparently this guy's also a motorcycle rider, and it, if you don't have hands and you don't have legs, it's going to be difficult to ride a motorcycle.
Wow. There was that awful story too about, you never know what could happen, because that young boy too in Australia, he was only but 19, and he was at a party. He was at a beer party with the guys, and they dared him to eat a garden slug. Now, this wasn't an Australian garden slug. Of course, I've never tried a garden slug myself here, and I don't want to try it, because what happened to him is he got this form of sepsis too, where he just lost control of all of his limbs, and he got severely retarded, out of his mind. He's in a wheelchair. He can't talk. And the story came out that the parents needed 24-hour around-the-clock care for him.
Yeah, it's a sad story too, but not many people are going around eating garden slugs.
No.
A lot of people are getting licked by dogs.
Yeah. Several people getting licked by the dogs. Yes, that's just an amazing story. It sounds rare, but I guess it shows you that things can happen.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was a kid, parents would come in and be like, stop playing video games, go outside, play, do your homework, get off that screen, get off that video game. Nowadays, though, some parents are encouraging their kids to play video games to the point where they're actually hiring video game tutors to help their kids get better at various video games. And the tutors can run around $20 an hour. It's a mind-blowing concept, but I kind of get it a little bit, but not really still. It's for the biggest games out right now. So Fortnite is one of the big ones, because that game is huge amongst young people now, people in their probably 20s and below. And the parents say that they're hiring these video game tutors to help their kids get better, because being good at a game like Fortnite improves their social life. You're not on there playing by yourself. You're on there playing with your friends and people from all over the world. So it's a social game in many ways. One parent told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "There's pressure not just to play a game, but to be really good at it. So you don't want to play and be bad and have people make fun of you. So you want to be good enough to where you can hang with your friends and maybe even be a little bit better than them." And kids are more obsessed with video games now than ever. So their parents say that they want them to be really good at something they love that much. So in a way, is this much different than parents getting their kids horseback riding lessons back in the day? I mean, horseback riding lessons weren't necessarily for a kid, but it brought them joy, and it was something that a lot of kids really wanted. I know a lot of little young girls and some boys that were like, I want horseback riding lessons.
Yeah, it doesn't sound to be that much different, no, because even, with a video game, that's not a bad thing, because kids should play some of them, because it might help with hand coordination and eye coordination, and your thinking. There's thinking skills involved, and with that socialization aspect too of playing with other kids of different parts of the world, that could be a pretty positive thing, I would think. I would conclude, just as long as my girl or boy weren't playing it like some 10 or 12 hours a day spending on there.
And with the rise of esports, if a kid gets good enough, they can possibly even go pro at video games and make some money, which blows my mind that esports are a growing thing. I saw it on ESPN the other day. They were playing a video game on ESPN. They were playing Overwatch, which is a game I've never played, but it's one of the big esports right now. And it just kind of, I'm sitting at a bar, they've got ESPN on, and they're playing Sports Center, and I'm watching the top 10 plays of the day and the not top 10 plays of the week and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's a bunch of kids playing video games on my TV.
Really?
It was weird. And I'm sitting at a sports bar drinking a beer, watching video games.
That is like weird. That's like something I've never seen. What sports bar were you at? Was it right
It
here
doesn't
in
matter.
town?
But yeah, it was Friday.
Uh-huh.
But it was just kind of, it blew my mind.
Yeah, that is a little bit mind blowing. You could just teach the kids how to play poker too, or play cards or something. That's getting social. I saw on TMZ yesterday where the Kardashians are into playing poker, I guess, and surprisingly, they were surprised about it. That Kim Kardashian, I guess, is a pretty good, solid poker player. Like not too bad.
Why would she be a bad poker player?
Because maybe with her going in to play poker, you might not think that she's that incredibly sharp, which I think she is. I think she's a great businesswoman. But she went into a celebrity poker game where they raised money for charity. And I think there was a female professional poker player even playing. And she came on and said, like, yeah, how thoughtful. Some of it is luck, but, some of it you have to think about your hand. And she just said that Kim Kardashian did pretty well.
I think Kim Kardashian has a great poker face because I think she's so controlled with her emotions at all times. That is a huge advantage for her in poker. I don't know if she was necessarily always a great business person. I don't think there's any doubt she's learned some things over the years. She knows what she's doing in many ways. Whether or not you like it's a different story.
I know.
But she definitely has a great poker face. I mean, you almost never see her flummoxed at any point in time, whether she's in public, private, whatever. She's always showing you exactly what she wants you to see.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful for a poker player. I used to enjoy playing poker when I was in college. That was back when poker was all the rage on TV and people were watching the World Series of Poker. There were poker nights all going on. In our dorm room, we would have a weekly poker tournament where we had like 40 people coming over.
Oh.
And we were playing Texas Hold'em there. We were going out to some probably 3 nights a week minimum. We were going somewhere and playing poker, somebody's house, or people were coming over to ours. And I played that for a long time and then just all of a sudden stopped. And I haven't played it much. Maybe play poker once a year now.
Yeah, that's how it used to be, like with a lot of games too. Like at one time I was playing Yahtzee all the time. That was like the popular thing when we were growing up in the 80s. We'd have Yahtzee night. And now I don't even know who's playing it anymore. It's just like things, you play it for a while and then for some reason the times change and it falls on the wayside.
Yeah.
Or you just forget about it after a while and then you say, why don't we play that anymore?
How old were you when you were doing Yahtzee nights?
Oh, probably like 12 or 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with the slumber party and the sleepovers. That along with Twister when we would bring the Twister mat out too. Yeah. And little girls falling all over the place, falling on the floor, driving my dad crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. You get a collection of young girls together, and adults are going to lose their mind. It's just sometimes you get probably the preteen, probably that 12 to just 15, 16 years old of teenage girls together, and you get 3 or more in a group, and I think you just want to pull your hair out.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what gender you are either. It doesn't matter if you're mom or dad. One of those parents are going to get a little bit like, oh, I wish I could get out of here for a while.
Yeah, I need a drink. I need just something to take the edge off here.
We need to send just one girl home, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, there's a rule. No more than 2 together at any given time. 7:21 is the time this morning. Treasure Coast News is next. Taking a look at our Treasure Coast News, the toxic algae alert is making national headlines. NBC News crews visited Southwest Florida, where they are also dealing with the blue-green algae over there, the same issue that we are dealing with here on the Treasure Coast. WPTV's Alana Quillen spoke with local leaders here about how the national attention is affecting tourism.
This area relies on visitors from all across the country. Today, I learned that the local tourism bureau is actually taking lessons learned from 2016 and applying it to this year. They're ramping up social media to try to keep tourists in the loop. Florida in the spotlight, but not for a good reason.
How bad is it here? It is pretty drastic.
NBC Nightly News now reporting on the algae crisis. That kind of national attention is something the Martin County Tourism Bureau must navigate.
So we're trying to showcase all the things you can do, but the misperception is everything's shut down.
Tourism manager Narissa Okie told me they've received a couple of concerns from potential tourists worried about what they're seeing on social media when it comes to algae.
I think some of the misconceptions are that you hear the area is blanket in algae, or that there's no access to any type of water.
She says transparency is key.
And while there's definitely areas you don't want to be taking part in, or activities you don't necessarily want to do right now, a lot of the things that tourists typically do are not impacted by our water conditions.
The Bureau has ramped up its website, protectourparadise.com. They've also launched the Here and Now campaign, photos posted by tourists themselves only within the last 5 days.
So it's not the Tourism Bureau showing a pretty picture that may be from a month ago or 2 months ago. It's all very relevant content.
The site also has a marquee with the latest water conditions, as well as answers to common toxic algae questions, contact numbers, and links to water quality reports.
It's a very delicate line. We want people to come, but we want to make sure we're not giving them false information or a false experience when they come down.
Now, the Chamber of Commerce told me that tourists right now are really enjoying offshore fishing, which has not been affected. And unlike 2016, all of the beaches here in Martin County have remained open. Alana Quillen, WPTV News Channel 5.
The state is working to find vendors to clean up all the algae as part of a 7-county state of emergency. Captain Diana Voss with Marine Cleanup Initiative Incorporated thinks she has the solutions.
We're interested in is clean water, and we're interested in doing something about this very problem.
It's a new type of technology, a robot that collects the algae and even puts oxygen back into the water. It's called an algae remediation robot project, a pontoon watercraft powered by solar and wind. It can convert algae into synthetic fuel. Dozens of vendors are applying to help clean up all of the algae blooms throughout the states. Meanwhile, the public is invited to a meeting tonight in Stuart to talk about the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project with the Army Corps of Engineers, where they plan to discuss limiting the flow of water into the northern part of the lake. The meeting will be from 6 to 8 p.m. at the IRSC Wolf High Technology Center in Stuart. On Tuesday, a group of Senate Democrats spoke out about the prospect of downloadable blueprints that would enable individuals to make plastic guns using a 3D printer being released online today. Well, Florida Senator Bill Nelson denounced the idea of such guns.
Suddenly, there is going to be published on the internet the plans for making a gun that can evade the detection system in airports and seaports and all of these governmental buildings, as well as some sports stadiums. It just defies common sense.
Now, a federal judge yesterday did grant a request for a temporary restraining order that prevents the plans from being published online for at least right now. The concern is that these 3D printed guns would not carry serial numbers and would be untraceable, and would be a big boost to felons and other people who are unable to legally purchase a firearm. Last month, the State Department settled a lawsuit with Defense Distributed, allowing the company to publish the blueprints. At least 8 states and the District of Columbia filed suit in federal court, calling on the Trump administration to block the online publication of the blueprints. Meanwhile, a new poll has indicated that U.S. Senate race between incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson and Republican Governor Rick Scott continues to be one of the most competitive in the country. The Mason-Dixon survey shows Scott opening a narrow lead over Nelson, 47% to 44%. More construction in Port St. Lucie. Work is set to begin today to improve the intersection of Port St. Lucie Boulevard and Gatlin Boulevard. Lane closures and detours will be necessary, but will only be used on an as-needed basis and will generally take place during off-peak hours. The work is set to last through April of 2019. Now, another major Port St. Lucie Boulevard intersection is in the middle of improvements right now, and that's just a few miles down the road. The intersection between Port St. Lucie Boulevard, Bayshore, and the Turnpike ramp is in the middle of getting upgraded as well. That's a look at our Treasure Coast news here this morning. The time is 7:27.
And right now, look at the roads. There's some debris in the roadway, St. Lucie County. It's on I-95 southbound right at Gatlin Boulevard in Port St. Lucie. There's a garage can in the right lane, so use caution. Call if you see traffic. We're at 220 WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
Stuart, we're at 80, and WPTV weather brought to us by Code Red Roofers. Roofers who respond. Code Red Roofers cares, calls you back, shows up, and finishes on time. Call 287-2829. Let's get more on our forecast at WPTV.
Saving you money. I'm Linda Bell with the Fox Business Network. Older Americans are facing a financial crisis in their golden years, student loan debt. Katratina, writer at Student Loan Hero, says by trying to help their children or grandchildren, seniors are putting their retirement in danger.
There are some things that you have to put yourself first. It's kind of like being on the airplane, how you have to secure your own oxygen first. You have to take care of your own finances, and I strongly discourage people from co-signing loans because so much of it can go wrong.
And once you default on student loans, Tratina says the consequences can be severe.
They'll actually go to your employer and they'll take your wages. If that's not enough, they'll also go after your tax refund, and they can even go after some of your benefits.
She says seniors having trouble paying their federal loans should look into income-driven repayment plans.
Some people can even qualify for a payment as low as $5. So someone on a fixed income, that can give them an incredible amount of relief.
Saving you money. I'm Linda Bell, Fox News.
Fox on Tech.
The midterm elections are coming, and there are efforts underway to secure the elections from cyber threats.
Threats are coming in, and they've been coming in for the past couple of years. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea have all been probing our systems. And it's not just our election systems, it's also our water, electric grid, power supply, all of those things. But the top threat would be to make Americans have less faith in our electoral system.
Speaking to Fox and Friends First, cybersecurity expert Lisa Garber says the Department of Homeland Security wants to be the primary voice in terms of cybersecurity, especially regarding the election process.
The problem is right now it looks like a patchwork. Every state, every county actually has its own way, whether it's a paper ballot, whether it's an online system connected to the internet, or just a digitized system. The Department of Homeland Security is really trying to unite all of these and implement higher secure, better ways of taking these election counts.
With Fox on Tech, Jim McKay, Fox News.
And the Marlins up in Atlanta, continuing their series against the Braves. Atlanta scored early. They took a 1-0 lead after the first inning, pushed it to a 3-0 lead after the third inning, then really cracked the game open in the fourth inning The Marlins scored 2 runs in the top half of the inning, but the Braves responded with 5 more runs in the bottom of the 4th. They took a commanding 8-2 lead there, and they would roll to an 11-6 victory. The Braves racking up 19 hits in the ball game. So Atlanta has taken games 1 and 2 of the 3-game series. The final match is tonight at 7:30. Well, there were a bunch of lopsided games yesterday in Major League Baseball. The Rays were on the good side of one of them. They defeated the Angels 10-6. Elsewhere, the Diamondbacks shut out the Rangers 6-0, but none of the games were more lopsided than the Nationals versus the Mets. Washington started it off with 7 runs in the bottom of the 1st. They then added 3 more runs in the bottom of the 2nd, then in the bottom of the 3rd, then in the bottom of the 4th, then in the bottom of the 5th. Then they added 6 runs in the bottom of the 8th. They dominated the Mets in this game 25-4. Franchise record, highest scoring game in Nationals franchise history. Daniel Murphy had a couple of early home runs, and it was emergency reliever Jose Reyes getting spanked for the Mets a lot in that game. 25-4, the final score. NFL training camps rolling on. The Miami Dolphins are off today after 5 straight practices. The big news from yesterday revolved around one of the newer faces on offense, Albert Wilson. He was expected to come in and use his speed to operate out of the slot, but head coach Adam Gase says he actually thinks Wilson might be more of an outside receiver. Wilson is from Port St. Lucie. He went to high school for Port St. Lucie High School, the Jaguars. He graduated in 2010, went to play college at Georgia State before he was signed on as an undrafted free agent with the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2014. He spent 4 seasons with the Chiefs before signing a 3-year contract this offseason with the Dolphins. That's a look at sports here on WSTU.
How did you guys meet? And I say this next part as a woman that champions other women, as a woman who chose to be single for a very long time. I always feel when single women ask me, so how did you guys meet? It's less about a genuine personal inquiry for me, and it's more like they're looking for clues, like, where did you find a suitor? Like, you walk in to a Trader Joe's on a Sunday night, because that's when hot girls go grocery shopping. Like, I'm buying flowers for me, right? You walk into a Trader Joe's with a ring on your left hand. Single women can feel the vibrations of the ring. They're like, the ring, it mocks us! And they come out of the frozen yogurt aisle. Lululemon, highlighted hair, like, tell us your ways, we wish to be betrothed as well. Secrets. Be a girl's girl.
There is a brand new style of Crocs that have just been introduced, and they are selling out all over the place. Although I've got to be honest, I'm not sure why. Take a look. That's right, high heel Crocs. Did we ask for this? High heel Crocs, the perfect shoe for when you get invited to a wedding and the invitation says food court formal. For the woman who wants to let everyone know she's the drunkest mum at the kids' pool party. High heel Crocs for when you want to be 2.5 inches above rock bottom. Europe's highest court ruled that Nestle cannot patent the break-apart shape of its Kit Kat chocolate bar. Yeah, Kit Kat responded to the verdict saying, give me a break.
Facebook is working on a talent show feature that will let users record themselves singing and then upload their video for comments. Facebook even has a catchy name for it, YouTube. First day of Paul Manafort's trial for tax evasion and money laundering. Now, if you don't remember Manafort, he was Trump's campaign chairman in 2016. Here he is doing an interview.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
Okay. After he saw that, Rudy Giuliani was like, where'd you learn to speak so beautifully? I mean,
Today, August 1st, it's National Raspberry Cream Pie Day. That sounds gross.
No, I'm all over that one. I get more excited about the raspberry cream pie even more than cotton candy. And you know how excited I get about cotton candy.
I feel like the cream pie element of it, though, is just not quite right. What kind of cream are we talking about here?
I think we're talking about maybe mixing the raspberries, like making it sort of like a raspberry custard, maybe.
Yeah.
Custard-like cream. And with a little bit of possibly some cream cheese in there, a whipped cream topping, and making it very pretty with the raspberry colored cream flowing right through the middle there.
Yeah, I'll try it, but I won't be too excited about it. Maybe I'm wrong. There's a survey that was recently done to find out how people pronounce different food words. And it's interesting because some of these things you look at and you go, there can't be multiple ways that you pronounce these things. And then you realize, oh, absolutely. No, I can totally see where there's two different ways to pronounce it. And I don't know which one's right. So do you say pecan or pecan?
I've always said pecan. And, you know, for some reason, I don't even know why. But I can maybe liken it to the fact of maybe how I grew up and how I heard people saying it early on in my years.
I feel
maybe
like
that's why I say it that way.
I feel like I go both. I feel like that's one where I go back and forth.
Yeah.
Because I know when I'm at Waffle House, I order a pecan waffle.
You just said pecan. Yes.
I know. Yeah.
Yes.
That's how I order the pecan waffle. But I also think I call it pecans if I'm just talking about it in other settings. But 62% of the survey said they call it pecan.
Mm-hmm.
Is it caramel or caramel?
Caramel.
I think it's caramel. But I also say caramel every once in a while.
It goes like when I was growing up, we would make carameled apples. I never said the carameled apples. It was always carameled.
So I think I go caramel. I think I say caramel most often. I'm trying to think because usually the caramel I consume is in the form of ice cream.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I would look at, salted caramel. Yeah. 57% said caramel, by the way, for this survey. Is it mayonnaise or mayonnaise?
Mayonnaise, like it's spelled. I guess because when I have to spell it out, we were just trying to decide how to spell mayonnaise the other night, and I had to go inside my refrigerator and bring out the jar of mayo.
I don't have the spelling in front of me. I only have the way to do the pronunciation. So M-A-Y. Are there two Y's?
Nope, there is just one.
M-A-Y.
Mayo, M-A-Y-O.
O-N-N-A-I-S-E?
Nope, it is M-A-Y-O-N-A-I-S-E. Mayonnaise.
Oh, so I added an extra N in there?
Yes, you did.
It's because the Hellmann's.
I was confused. Is it A-S-E or is it A-I-S-E? But it is indeed with the A-I-S-E too.
Yeah. I go mayonnaise. That's how I pronounce it. 52% of people agree with me. Mayonnaise is how you say that one.
But is it mayonnaise or Miracle Whip?
I prefer mayonnaise. I'm not a big Miracle Whip fan, although I'm not one of these people that is going to be totally turned off by Miracle Whip.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to hand me a sandwich with mayo or Miracle Whip on it, I don't think I could tell the difference.
I understand. Yeah, I would take either one in that matter too. And you can make deviled eggs with either one too. They both taste good.
Almond or almond?
Almond.
Yeah, I think almond too. I mean, it's got an L in there. You got to pronounce the L. You can't just go almond. 79% of people do pronounce the L in that one. I don't even know why this one's on here. Milk or milk?
Milk, like milk?
Milk.
Milk.
Yeah, milk, of course. Only 8% of people say it like there's an E in there. That's got to be one of those strange regional dialects.
I think so, but I don't know what region that would be from. Maybe it would be from Maryland or I don't know.
Orange or orange?
Orange.
89% of people say orange. Yeah.
Aren't you smart?
Apricot or apricot?
That one is kind of like your pecan and pecan, where I could go either way. One just doesn't strike out for me more. I can say apricot or apricot.
I think it's apricot for me. I don't think I've ever said apricot. 64% of people said apricot here. And is it bagel or bagel?
Definitely a bagel. I've never heard of a bagel. What's a bagel?
I haven't. I mean, it's apparently a way to pronounce bagel. 95% of people are with you. They've never heard of bagel, but apparently it is a thing.
Yeah.
Probably mainly. I'm looking at a restaurant in Toronto. I think in Canada they pronounce it as bagel.
That's weird. I've never heard of that. Only bagel. There's also like tomato and tomato, potato and potato.
Yeah, I'm looking at comments here. There's a discussion on Yelp about the way to say it, and one guy's like, "Yeah, I said bagel until 16 years old. I had to correct myself when I turned in or became an adult." Yeah, so there you go. Different ways to pronounce various words.
One thing I want to bring up, it's kind of like where you grew up, and like I said, it's kind of how your parents said it. That's the way you're going to say it. It goes like even with the story of Dan Quayle way back when he said to a student who I think was in a spelling bee, and the student spelled potato Patato, which is correct.
Okay.
And then Dan Quayle kind of said, no, he just said, no, you're misguided with that. There's an E on the end of it. And so it was the big story of the time where the vice president spelled potato wrong.
Right.
But in a sense, he grew up as an Indiana boy, too, where he would go out with his parents to these marketplaces. And in the potato stands and the tomato stands, they would actually spell a lot of the signs on the stands would have an E at the end of it. So he grew up watching the spelling of it that way.
Yeah, and I get that, but on one sense, there is an agreed upon spelling of the word.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a regional dialect. Like there's regional dialects all over the place and different ways to say certain things. I mean, I know I'm from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a ton of sayings. You know, red up your room.
Rit up your room?
Yeah, go red up your room.
I never heard that. How do you rit up your room?
Go red.
Red up your
red,
room?
like the color. Go
Never-
red up your room.
Never heard of that.
It started with, basically saying go clean your room, go make your room ready, go red up your
wow.
room. That's one of them. There's all kinds of different dialects and different sayings that are unique to the region, but spelling should at least be common.
Yeah, and when I got down here, G kind of got on me when I was on the radio because I grew up where everybody said the theater. We're going to go to the theater tonight.
Well, that's super fancy.
And then they'd be like, no, it's theater. Theater. So I have to protect. I practiced it at home. I practiced it at home in front of the mirror just so I could say it right. Theater.
I think if you're talking about a movie theater, it's theater.
Okay.
That's the right way to do it. But if you're talking about a stage, then I think it's appropriate at that point to go theater.
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 Theater. Is it theater or theater?
It's and how you can spell it differently too, I guess, with a THEATRE.
Yeah, you swap the E and the R at the end.
Yeah, that's right.
One's fancy and one's not. And if you're talking about something with the stage where you got actors and people going out there performing, I feel like you give them the benefit of the fancy way to say it.
So I was actually saying it the fancy way.
You were saying it the fancy way. You should call G up and yell at him.
Good gosh, I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna go back to saying theater.
There you go. 7:52 is the time this morning. Treasure Coast News is next. The toxic algae alert is making national headlines. NBC News crews have visited Southwest Florida, where blue-green algae is filling the waterways, the same issue that many parts here on the Treasure Coast are dealing with right now. WPTV's Alana Quillen spoke with local leaders to find out how the national attention is affecting our local tourism.
This area relies on visitors from all across the country. Today, I learned that the local tourism bureau is actually taking lessons learned from 2016 and applying it to this year. They're ramping up social media to try to keep tourists in the loop. Florida in the spotlight, but not for a good reason.
How bad is it here? It is pretty drastic.
NBC Nightly News now reporting on the algae crisis. That kind of national attention is something the Martin County Tourism Bureau must navigate.
So we're trying to showcase all the things you can do, but the misperception is everything's shut down.
Tourism manager Narissa Okie told me they've received a couple of concerns from potential tourists worried about what they're seeing on social media when it comes to algae.
I think some of the misconceptions are that you hear the area is blanket in algae, or that there's no access to any type of water.
She says transparency is key.
And while there's definitely areas you don't want to be taking part in, or activities you don't necessarily want to do right now, a lot of the things that tourists typically do are not impacted by our water conditions.
The Bureau has ramped up its website, protectourparadise.com. They've also launched the Here and Now campaign, photos posted by tourists themselves only within the last 5 days.
So it's not the Tourism Bureau showing a pretty picture that may be from a month ago or 2 months ago. It's all very relevant content.
The site also has a marquee with the latest water conditions, as well as answers to common toxic algae questions, contact numbers, and links to water quality reports.
It's a very delicate line. We want people to come, but we want to make sure we're not giving them false information or a false experience when they come down.
Now, the Chamber of Commerce told me that tourists right now are really enjoying offshore fishing, which has not been affected. And unlike 2016, all of the beaches here in Martin County have remained open. Alana Quillen, WPTV News Channel 5.
And more than 800,000 gallons of raw sewage has been dumped into the Indian River Lagoon by the city of Titusville, but it was done accidentally after an abandoned sewer main gave way near a lift station. The city says that leak has been patched. That's your Treasure Coast News. It's 7:55.
Well, right now, we don't have any accidents to report right here. The roads are looking clear this morning along the Treasure Coast. And if you see traffic, give us a call right here at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. Out on the roadways right now throughout Martin County and St. Lucie County, it's looking like a nice ride on this Wednesday morning. We don't have any accidents to report. If you see any, call us. We're at 220-9788, 220-WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
Palm City is at 82 and it's 81 in Jensen Beach. Let's get more right now at WPTV.
There are nearly 100 wildfires burning in the U.S., almost all of them in the West.
Jury selection begins in the trial of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort.
Trump tweeted a thank you to Senator Rand Paul. The Republican announced he will support Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court.
The former personnel chief at FEMA is facing accusations of carrying on inappropriate relationships with subordinates.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on the Trump administration's efforts to reunite migrant children.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says officials are now looking at rule changes around capital gains.
More major leaguers switching teams.
Facebook is exposing 32 Facebook and Instagram pages of the social networking giant says were involved in a political influence campaign with links to the Russian government.
The entire cast of the Disney Marvel film Guardians of the Galaxy signed an open letter of support for director James Gunn.
According to Digital Music News, Apple now has more subscribers to its streaming music service than industry leader Spotify.
8:09 here on this Wednesday morning, August the 1st, 2018. On Wednesdays, we like to speak with Martin County Administrator Taryn Krista, who gives us that inside scoop of what's going on with the county. And Taryn's joining us on the phone line again here this morning. Good morning, Taryn.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Excited for it to be August, and we've got fall hopefully right around the corner.
I was wondering why you were excited for August.
It's just because we're plowing through. I'm
I'm
tired of sweating and just being sticky all the time. It's awful.
Yeah.
But
that's why we're in Florida.
I know, I guess it is. A lot of people pay good money to travel down here and visit. So it's a good thing. Yeah. But one of the bad things we've been dealing with here on the Treasure Coast, of course, has been the algae blooms once again in the river. It's been the major news story for several months now, and I understand that the county is going to be taking some actions here in the form of at least a meeting.
Yeah, we went ahead. We did not have a meeting scheduled for next week, a normal meeting, but we're going to go ahead and schedule an emergency meeting. I don't have all my commissioners will be available, but I think we'll have at least 4 here. And it's just an opportunity for them to get an update on what's going on. DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, has announced that they are making monies available for government entities to utilize those funds in order to remove the algae.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been out there trying to see what companies would possibly be able to do that. What exactly are they talking about? Making sure that, our concern is once you start breaking this up and getting it into the air, then what happens? Because then it starts becoming airborne, and how can we capture it? And we're finding that there's no place that wants to take it. So we're so we're doing the best that we can to try and find different mechanisms that could be available to us to help alleviate the situation. The water, you're talking about the heat. The water is staying up around 85, 86 degrees. So it's just percolating that algae, unfortunately. And the conditions are just, I don't see, unless we do get cooler weather or something changes, I don't see it changing for the month of August, probably.
And we've had a couple of stories, and in fact, we've got one in our newscast this morning about a company and the technology that they've come up with that they say can help fight the algae that's in the river. And I remember seeing similar stories back in 2016 at the height of the crisis there. And I was I was surprised to hear about the airborne element, that when you agitate the algae, it releases stuff into the it releases the toxins up into the air. Never thought about that. I just assumed that it was a combination of probably too expensive to do or not effective enough to do a widespread area like we would need.
Well, Mike, I think it's a little bit of both. If you think about, they're only dealing with what we can see.
Mm-hmm.
There are particles that are in the, it's broken up, and until it starts collecting together and making these bigger areas or matting, that's when you can see it. But there are particles in the water that, you probably can't even see. So how, to what magnitude are we going to be able to actually make a difference? A few folks think that, we should just stop it from coming from the lake. Well, it's not all from the lake. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. We get a lot of our own runoff,
mm-hmm.
and it's just that those nutrients coming off the runoff combined with the heat and everything else is just making it, and the fresh water, just is making it the perfect storm for this algae to grow. Unfortunately.
Yeah. The way that I've seen it kind of described is you've got a recipe for blue-green algae, and we've got plenty of all the ingredients
mm-hmm.
that you need.
Yeah, we're making a big batch.
Yeah, exactly. You got the witch's cauldron
mm-hmm.
of the St. Lucie River there. Well, it's certainly a major issue, and it's a complicated issue. So the emergency meeting called next week, is it only going to look at potential companies that have ideas on how to remove the algae from the river, or are some other topics going to be brought up as well?
No, the only topic, our intent of having the meeting will be to brief the board on where we are and what staff is planning on doing. We have reached out and invited other entities to be there. The Center for Disease Control, the Health Department, DET, the Water Management District, just to see, the Army Corps, what is there that we could possibly do. The Army Corps actually is having a meeting this evening
mm-hmm.
at IRSC in the Wolf Center. I think it's from 6 to 8.
Yes,
to talk
it is.
about the lake as well. They had one last night in Coral Springs. Because everybody, the impact 2 years ago was pretty much centralized around us. This time, the West Coast is experiencing what we experienced 2 years ago with the large matting and some of the more complicated algae issues, if you will. And ours has not risen to that same level, knock on wood, but and then Coral Springs, even to the south, they're getting some of that. So
I had no idea it was that far south.
Yeah, so because they had a meeting last night with the Army Corps, and the people were up in arms as well.
Wow.
So it's unfortunate. And what I heard on the news this morning, of course, you can't always wrap your head around that, but it's kind of the feeling is, well, the algae is the least of the things for them to deal with. They're primarily looking at the lake and the dike and the releases and everything as a safety issue.
With the Herbert Hoover Dike, and if that were to fail, you put everybody who lives in that area right south of the lake in danger.
Exactly.
And that makes sense. It's you've got two horrible options, it seems, with what they're faced right now, which is, I know that the part of the reason for the reservoir is, okay, we know you can't necessarily keep all that water in the lake and you got to put it somewhere. It's just putting it through the St. Lucie River and the Caloosahatchee River results in this toxic blue-green algae, which is horrible for everybody. It's not a good option, so we need to find something else. And I think the meeting tonight is supposed to be largely about the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project, which is, I think, controlling the water coming into the northern part of the lake, which is a big part of it.
But they'll be prepared to talk about the algae. 'Cause, it's in fact, I just knowing how upset the residents are and seeing some of the emails that are coming to us and knowing what we're dealing with. Palm City, there's a lot of places over there that have the algae. I think there'll be quite a number of folks that are going to want to talk about what's happening right now.
Yeah, I'm sure the Army Corps has got to be prepared. They might be saying it's for this other topic, but they know it's going to come around to the algae if they're going to open it up for public talk, and especially the fact that they're doing it right here in Stewart, like you said, at the IRSC campus, the Wolf High Technology Center there.
So right now, the lake is at a little under 14 and a half feet. It's about the same that it was last week and the week prior. So, there's not a lot, even though they have these discharges going on, we're still having afternoon rain. So, I would anticipate the discharges to continue. We did have a period there where they had stopped them and they were pulsing and they were doing some different things, and that's what we continue to do. We continue to ask them to work with us on the pulsing, possibly doing it at certain times with the tide. And we'll continue to push for that just to see if we can minimize the impacts to the best of our ability.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, the pulse discharges seemed to really help. Are we seeing that same impact this year?
Well, we haven't really been, we're hoping that they were going to start a lower pulse release just a couple days ago. So we haven't been able to see a difference yet. So next week probably we'll be able to know whether or not that's helped us. It should. I mean, you would think it would, but anything that they'll do to work with us, we really appreciate, and we want to keep with them. We have a good relationship with the Army Corps and the Water Management District, and we want to keep working with those folks to minimize those impacts as best we can.
Nice. All right. Well, it is definitely a major issue, and it's something that you got to work at from several different angles. And we've got the emergency meeting with the Board of County Commissioners next Tuesday, right?
Yep, August the 7th from 9 to 11. You can watch us on your computer at www.martin.fl.us. Or on your cable if you have the channel 20 and CTV.
All right, Taryn. Well, thanks for giving us a call here this morning, keeping us updated, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Martin County Administrator Taryn Krizda joining us on the phone line here this morning. Bonnie, did you see the images going around yesterday? I saw them all over Facebook, and they were heartbreaking. It was of the manatees that were fighting in the algae, and the one manatee that died as a result of it. Did you see those images?
I didn't see the images, but sounds heartbreaking.
It was heartbreaking to see the manatee that was killed and was just kind of floating in that nasty green and brown and blue sludge. And it happened really close to, I think it was close to where they were holding that meeting last night with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I had to close Facebook because it was so heartbreaking to see those images. And I'm normally not one to get emotional over images like that, but that one bothered me.
That would get me very emotional because the manatee has to swim somewhere, and when it's just caught in that thick slushy algae, it just seems like so unfair. I saw on the news too where one family, their vacation was ruined because they just couldn't get away from the algae. They were a little bit down south, they saw it, then they come up here and they saw more of it. and their vacation kind of ruined by it because it was kind of like everywhere.
Well, it's strange because I've heard offshore is fantastic still.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't like it was 2 years ago where even the beaches are covered in green slime. So the beaches are okay. You can go offshore. I'm surprised that they would have trouble finding spots.
Yeah, and apparently they did. And I even remember doing deep sea fishing a while back, and we went out there, and like out in the ocean there, the waters were terrific.
Sure.
So, but yeah, when it comes to the fish and the manatee and things dying, that's just very heartbreaking. But it's just like we can't escape the rainy season either, and it's just been pouring every day. I wish we could eliminate some of this rain here.
Yeah.
Might help out a little.
Yeah. 8:21 is the time here this morning. We've got Treasure Coast News coming up next. Well, the first ever high school in St. Lucie County has undergone several transformations over the years, but maybe none bigger than the latest one. The Fort Pierce Magnet School of the Arts is set to turn into the first K-8 performing arts school on the Treasure Coast. WPTV's John Shaman reports.
It's a piece of Fort Pierce history, standing since 1914.
Originally, the school was St. Lucie High School.
The first high school in the county, this building along Delaware Avenue has undergone many changes. Now, the Fort Pierce Magnet School of the Arts,
this is the most excited I have ever been,
is known as CAST.
This is a Creative Arts Academy of St. Lucie.
Dr. Lori Ann Reed is principal of the first K-8 performing arts school on the Treasure Coast.
Students really need to be exposed to the fine arts at an early age so that they're able to make some decisions and where they want to go.
A small theater is still under construction and dance studio space is being created. There's also major work wrapping up in the auditorium with new lights, speakers, and a soundboard for hands-on student training.
Have and be able to make adjustments within the sound system so that they are providing the right sounds throughout the auditorium.
The district was successful in applying for a $12.5 million federal grant that over the next 5 years will make improvements not just here to the CAST Academy, but also to the Gaines Academy of Emerging Technologies, and then next year to Fort Pierce Westwood High School. The goal is to get more students in underutilized schools by establishing unique programs.
Probably about 350 or 400 to about 650 eventually.
The school is open to all students in St. Lucie County. Interested? There's an application on the district website and a random lottery to fill the seats. In Fort Pierce, John Shaman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
Well, yesterday, a group of Senate Democrats spoke out about the prospect of downloadable blueprints that would enable individuals to make plastic guns using a 3D printer being released online today. Florida Senator Bill Nelson denounced the idea of such guns.
Suddenly, there is going to be published on the internet the plans for making a gun that can evade the detection system in airports and seaports and all of these governmental buildings, as well as some sports stadiums. It just defies common sense.
The 3D printed guns would not carry serial numbers and would be untraceable, making them an ideal solution for people who cannot legally get their hands on guns. Last month, the State Department settled a lawsuit with Defense Distributed, allowing the company to publish the blueprints. And on Monday, several states and the District of Columbia filed suit in federal court in Seattle, calling on the Trump administration to block the online publication of the blueprints. Late yesterday, a federal judge did grant a request for a temporary restraining order preventing the plans to be posted online, at least temporarily. And President Trump tweeted out his stance that he was going to be looking into 3D plastic guns and said that the idea doesn't seem to make much sense to him. Meanwhile, a new poll indicates the U.S. Senate race between incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson and Republican Governor Rick Scott continues to be one of the most competitive in the country. The Mason-Dixon survey shows Scott opening a narrow lead over Nelson, 47% to 44%. More construction in Port St. Lucie. Work is set to begin today to improve the intersection of Port St. Lucie Boulevard and Gatlin Boulevard. Lane closures and detours will be necessary, but will only be used on an as-needed basis and will generally take place during off-peak hours. The work is set to last through April of 2019. Just down the road, another major Port St. Lucie Boulevard intersection is in the middle of improvements. The intersection at Port St. Lucie Boulevard, Bayshore, and the Turnpike ramp is getting some major upgrades as well. That's a look at our Treasure Coast news here this morning. It's now time for the Precious Metals Report, brought to us by St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin. Gold's opening at $1,221.20 an ounce. Silver's opening at $15.43 an ounce. The Precious Metals Report brought to us by St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin.
Out on the roadways right now, Stewart and in Port St. Lucie, we don't see any accidents. If you see one throughout the morning, call us. We're at 220-WSTU.
Treasure Coast weather.
Right now it's 81 in Port St. Lucie, and WPTV weather is brought to us by Code Red Roofers. Roofers who respond. Code Red Roofers cares, calls you back, shows up, and finishes on time. Call 287-2829. Let's get more at WPTV.
Space, the final frontier with Randy Siegel and the Space Report on WSTU. Good morning, Randy.
morning to you, sir. Well, back in 1967, we'll make that 1968, the Saturn V production line ended. That's when America decided no more heavy lift vehicles will be needed because we're done with going to the moon in the near future. And now here we are today, getting ready 50 years later to go back to the moon with a totally different vehicle. Very interesting. The crew on board the International Space Station is gearing up for this SpaceX Dragon spacecraft to return to Earth on Friday. A host of life science studies are being returned aboard the Dragon, looking at cancer therapies, gut microbes, and a variety of other biological phenomena. The samples were collected from those studies, including an experimental hardware housing the research, are being transferred from the station and stowed inside the Dragon. SpaceX technicians will release Dragon loaded with earthbound cargo when it splashes down in the Pacific Ocean Friday afternoon. Once the craft has reached port, personnel from NASA and the Center for Advancement of Science in Space, CASAS, will collect the research and hardware and distribute it to the scientists and engineers for analysis. So a lot of the hard work they're doing will be sent back, and we'll be able to see some of the results here on Earth. The Russians and the United States have certified Russia's RD-180 engines for the Atlas V carrier rocket. The RD-180s have been used successfully on Atlas V rockets for some time now, and NASA has decided they can certify this particular engine because it'll be an Atlas V that will launch the Starliner spacecraft into orbit. At the same time, the government of Russia has signed a deal to sell additional RD-180 engines to the United States, even though there are sanctions that are in place. It appears that space is relatively immune from a lot of these sanctions because of the goodwill that goes with launches to the International Space Station. A Minuteman III rocket was tested yesterday at Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's an intercontinental ballistic missile. It was chosen from one of the bases that house the Minuteman III in case there should be a war and we have to use the rocket. Well, in this case, not so good, because early yesterday morning, the Minuteman III had to be exploded electronically when the range safety officer noticed that it was going off course, and they had to blow it up. So now we have to go back and find out why this took place, what happened. In this case, a panel will be formed in order to understand exactly what happened with this Minuteman rocket. We have over 400 Minutemen in silos ready to be launched if we're under nuclear attack. The hope is that will never, ever have to happen. We have another launch delay for the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The launch of the Indonesian satellite has been delayed until the 7th. Launch will take place from Cape Canaveral on the 7th from Launch Complex 40. It'll be launched at 1:19 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It'll be put into a geosynchronous transfer orbit, and the first stage hopefully will land on, yes, of course I still love you, drone ship. NASA's Parker Space Telescope is getting ready for launch, and it's imperative that we get it up there and we can understand exactly what's going on with the sun. Something is happening with the sun that we haven't seen before. It's a mystery. It's indifference from all logic. its atmosphere gets much, much hotter the farther it stretches from the sun's blazing surface. Temperatures in the corona, that's the tenuous outermost layer of the solar atmosphere, spike upwards to 2 million degrees Fahrenheit, while just 1,000 miles below, the underlying surface simmers at a balmy 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. How the sun manages this feat remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in astrophysics. Scientists call it the coronal heating problem. The hope is that when Parker is launched on the 11th, that once it is certified working properly in space, that we can get some of the answers to these types of questions. According to a former Air Force secretary, he says that nobody in the Pentagon wants President Trump's Space Force. He says that it appears that the service is very happy with the various departments they have now, Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force, Coast Guard, and there's no need to have a separate Space Force. He says each of the departments is taking care of their areas, so it may be up to Congress whether they're going to fund a Space Force or not. Currently, Congress has no stomach to fund this sort of endeavor. U.S. intelligence is showing that North Korea is continuing to produce ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. The intelligence reports are showing that North Korea is building additional intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they're upgrading those that they already have. Granted, they haven't tested them in some time, but that doesn't prevent them from continuing production of them and allow them to test later. Hopefully, the work that President Trump is doing with the North Korean president will allow us not to have this type of vehicle launched and prove that they have the capacity to hit the United States. Lastly, we want to tell you that the Opportunity spacecraft on Mars continues to be asleep. There seems to be no relief in sight from the planet-wide dust storm that has silenced Opportunity because it cannot get the solar energy it needs from the sun due to the overcast conditions on the red planet. Tomorrow, we're going to tell you about a NASA Office of Inspector General's audit on the space station and the Government Accountability's audit on commercial satellites hosting defense payloads. So until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody.
Randy Siegel with the Space Report here on WSTU. Portions of Mike and Bonnie in the morning are brought to us by Ellie's Downtown Deli and Catering.
You want to make it a great lunch today, too. Order a warm and toasty panini. You can order up the Mason-Dixon with some ham and Munster cheese, or make it the Powerhouse today. This one has cracked pepper turkey and Swiss cheese, includes pickles and some honey mustard. And, maybe for a little bit of extra change, add some brownies. And Chef Mark will deliver them to your workplace. Maybe share some deli brownies with some of your favorite co-workers today. Make it Ellie's Deli for lunch.
Or get one of those giant cookies they've got that's about the size of your head. It's fantastic. I promise whatever you're going to get at Ellie's Downtown Deli and Catering, it is going to be fantastic. Head on down to the restaurant. They're located at 18 Southeast 6th Street, just off Colorado Avenue in Stewart, or pick up the phone and give them a call at 772-781-6605. Tell them you heard about it from Mike and Bonnie in the morning.
Mick Jagger would go like this. He'd go, Diet Coke, and one would appear in his hand. Now, that's not nice, right? The way I was raised, you're supposed to say, may I please have a Diet Coke, please? And then maybe you will get one. And I bet all of you were taught to say please and thank you. But if all of us could go, Diet Coke, and one would appear in our hand, we'd do it all day long. Even if you don't like Diet Coke, you just summon them so you could chuck them at oncoming cars. Famous people are often rude because they're used to getting things really quickly. And I bet a lot of us are pretty polite. But as soon as we get things quickly, we start to get ruder and ruder. Like, look at technology. It's faster than ever, and we're, like, ruder than ever. People walk around on the phone now like, hello? Hello? You still there? Lost him. And that's it. No follow through with that guy. 50 years ago, if you were on the telephone with your friend and suddenly the line just went dead, that meant your friend was murdered. The phone used to be a big deal. It was a long, polite process. Back in the 1940s, the phone was like a wood box with a thing on it. I don't know. And there weren't even numbers. You just go, hello, hello, anyone? Anyone in the world? And then you go, operator, ring me Neptune 5, 117. And the operator is a real person that you had to be nice to. She'd be like, 1 moment, please. I'm putting wires into a board filled with holes to move the voices around, because it is the 40s. And it took like 90 minutes. Now people just drive around screaming at their phones like, call home. Calling Tom, not Tom.
Dunkin' Donuts is now selling its first ever gluten-free product. It's called a cup.
Trump just swore in his new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Check out what he said right before the ceremony. Watch this.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you. We're proud of him, right? Anybody not proud? Because let me know now, please.
Why? That's why you should never have Trump speak at your wedding. It's like, anyone else not into this?
According to the latest numbers from Nielsen, Americans are spending an average of over 11 hours a day consuming media, watching TV, staring at the computer screen, looking at their phones. That is an amazingly long period of time, and I'm not surprised that it's increasing over the years as well. That's not really a surprise. The surprise is the most common form of media that people take in. Bonnie, what do you think the answer to that is?
I think it would be listening to us on the radio, Mike.
It is listening to the radio, and a lot of people would be surprised to hear that, but 92% of people listen to radio in an average week. TV is second at 88%. 88% of people will watch TV at some point during the week. Smartphones are third at 79%. Now, when you actually break down how many hours a day people spend doing each of those things, what do you think would be the thing that we spend the most time doing?
Probably on the smartphone.
Actually, that's number 2, which is 2.4 hours a day people are on their smartphone. But watching TV is number 1, 5.2 hours a day. And that includes watching live TV, watching recorded TV, or even a streaming device like a Roku.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of is all encompassing there. Radio's third on that list. People listen to 1.8 hours of radio a day. Using a tablet as opposed to your smartphone, that's fourth, followed by using the computer for non-work purposes, then playing video games, and then finally watching a DVD or a Blu-ray.
So with all of the technology and all of the above technology, which you just mentioned, I guess it's not surprising that some people would be averaging, what was it, 11
hours a day.
Hours a day, because I guess there's just so much technology at our fingertips, and that's where we're always going now. When we're emailing, when we're texting, when we're calling someone, we're using our smartphone. So that's a lot of usage.
What do you think your numbers break out? What would be the piece of media that you use the most?
I would have to admittedly, TV.
How many hours a day?
Maybe on average 2 or 3.
2 or 3? Is that the real answer or the answer you want to say?
No, that's like the real answer.
Okay.
That would be the real deal.
I-
I mean, yeah, because typically we're home at night, like after work, and those are TV watching hours, which would make it 2 or 3 usually.
Now, this doesn't necessarily specify this, but I listen to a lot of podcasts while I work. And I listen to them through my phone. But it's basically a radio show through the internet. So would that be considering me using a smartphone or me listening to the radio?
I think it would be a little bit of both. No, if you're, even though you're using your smartphone, you still are listening to a radio show.
All right, let's count it as radio. I would probably say that I'm listening to 4 hours of radio then a day because of that. And then probably using the smartphone close to that, but it's probably, for me, it would go radio 1, smartphone 2, live TV 3, and then everything else filters in underneath that. I watch TV. If I'm lucky, I get an hour or 2 a night. If I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Weekends, I can get more time in, usually watch a couple movies, but that's about it.
It's kind of nice that you can listen to that radio and, so often while, you're at your other stuff, because I'm sure like listening to broadcasts while you're at another job probably really helps you at this job, just swinging in all that extra information. If you can get in 4 hours a day of that, that's pretty cool.
It's more just to keep me from losing my mind.
Okay.
It's to keep me sane.
Yeah.
To keep me not bored out of my mind and to let the day move on a little bit. Because if I don't have that, the day drags.
In Madison, Wisconsin, too, I worked in a mail room for American Family Insurance. And in that mail room, it was just like very repetitive work. And I would always have headphones back when I had my little radio gadget and headphones back in the day. And the complete day there, I would have talk radio on. It was really stimulating, and it made the day go by so much quicker.
Yeah. I've always been somebody to have the radio playing or music playing in the background while I've been working. I mean, obviously not when I was at a restaurant where I couldn't make it happen, but the certain jobs I had when I was working at the coffee shop, I brought my CDs in, and we would, they had a CD player to play through the whole place. So I'd have my music going there, listening to the radio. When I worked in the office world, we were able to put our music onto our work computer and listen to iTunes. And so I did that, listen to podcasts. That's when I started listening to podcasts, was working in a cubicle farm, which apparently are going away. Apparently there's a new trend in office layout designs, and it's no longer the cubicle farm. The new hotness is this open space plan.
Open space.
I think I would quit.
Oh, yeah.
I think I would quit a job if they would switch to one of these open floor plans. The way it was described to me was that you go in and there's no assigned desk. At least the company that the guy I was talking to, that's what they're moving towards. There's not going to be an assigned desk. You have a locker, and all of your personal stuff goes in the locker. And at the beginning of the day, you get your stuff from your locker and you find a workspace to work in. No walls, no privacy. You're just out in an open floor plan with everybody there and all of the background noise and all of the distractions that come along with it. And you've got to sit there, you do your work, and then at the end of the night, you put your stuff back in the cubicle, and you might sit in a totally different place the next day.
Well,
I would hate that.
Well, in a sense, you are getting a variety of where you sit. You're not sitting in the same cubicle token every day. So maybe there's a little bit variety there. I like the idea of your personal belongings being locked in a locker overnight, and, your assigned locker.
I'd much rather lock them in my desk.
But I couldn't handle like the act of having that open floor plan and having people like looking at me every day or seeing me. and maybe I don't want to look out and have to be able to see other people either.
And sometimes you need that privacy to think things through. You come across a problem and you need to just kind of be able to shut the world off and work through the problem. I do anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to do that if you're in a cubicle and if you don't have any walls whatsoever. and everybody's just walking around.
Oh yeah.
It's a big issue to do that. And the interesting thing is, I was reading articles about it last night. This design is blowing up in the corporations' faces that have implemented it.
Oh.
They said it was going to spur creativity and create more of a team camaraderie. The reality is they did it because it was a lot cheaper than having to buy cubicles and having that all set up. But it's ending up biting them in the face because everybody's getting sick more often.
Okay.
People are coming in, they're spreading their germs all over the place. So there's people getting a lot more in the way of sick days. Productivity's down because people can't get their stuff done. And it's been a disaster, apparently.
I would be very anxious about it too, because like when I worked for an insurance company, like you get these calls in from different people, and when you're new at it, especially, it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to really get into what we were doing and which computer screen to go through for each projection that somebody called in with. And it's kind of hard stuff. So you would have to raise your hand too for a supervisor to come help you from time to time. So I would be that person raising my hand, and then all of my peers would see this like every day. So I would be kind of feeling embarrassed about it. I was needing the help and people watching me. And then I'd walk around thinking people were talking about me because I needed so much help.
They were definitely talking about you.
Yeah.
They were definitely.
I'm
People talk. People gossip. I was surprised when I went into the corporate world and I realized, oh my God, I'm back in high school.
I know.
There's the cliques. There's the groups of friends. There's the gossip going on underneath. There's the backstabbing. I'm in high school again.
It is. It's a hard thing. Have you ever gone back? If you go back to school too, like say when you're in your 40s and you have to get in that classroom setting, you think that things have changed and people have grown up. I found out that they really haven't, which is shameful. It made me never want to go back to school.
8:55 is the time this morning. Treasure Coast News is next. The state is working to find vendors that clean up all the algae as part of a 7-county state of emergency. Captain Diana Voss with Marine Cleanup Initiative Incorporated thinks she has the solutions.
We're interested in is clean water, and we're interested in doing something about this very problem.
It's a new type of technology, a robot that collects the algae and even puts the oxygen back into the water. It's a pontoon watercraft powered by solar and wind, and it can convert the algae into synthetic fuel. Marine Cleanup Initiative is just one of dozens of vendors applying to help clean up all the algae blooms throughout the state. Meanwhile, more than 800,000 gallons of raw sewage was dumped into the Indian River Lagoon by the city of Titusville. It happened after an abandoned sewer main gave way near a lift station. The city says that leak has been patched. Deputies arrested a Martin County teenager after he opened the door holding onto a bag of cannabis. The Martin County Sheriff's Office says that 18-year-old Maximilian Alexander had more than 40 grams of cannabis packed up in a clear plastic bag ready to sell. When he heard a knock on the door, he thought it was his customer, so he opened the door with the bag in his hand, but instead of his customer, it was the sheriff's deputies who were there to check up on Alexander. He had been involved in a fight earlier in the day, and the deputies said they just wanted to check up on him. Alexander was arrested and taken to the Martin County Jail. Now, Fort Pierce police say they are investigating a suspicious death. They say relatives found the body of 26-year-old Shelwanda Riley just after 6 p.m. Sunday in the 400 block of North 28th Street. Police say she had been shot. Riley was last seen alive the prior Friday. Investigators are asking anyone who may have information to call Treasure Coast Crime Stoppers at 1-800-273-TIPS. That's a look at our Treasure Coast news here this morning. Let's get one last look at traffic with Bonnie.
And in Martin County, we do see one accident. This is on I-95 in Hobe Sound. It's I-95 southbound at mile marker 96, happened just a few minutes ago, and there's not any roadblock there at the moment. There's your latest look at traffic.
And that's going to do it for us here on this Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us. Bonnie, have a great day.
Have a nice day too, Mike, and have a nice day, Treasure Coast.
We'll see you guys at the Tipsy Parrot tonight for some trivia at 7 o'clock. It's WSTU Stewart, 9 o'clock.